Welcome to a Harsh Realist broadcast on the 18th of November 2020. This broadcast reflects how concerned I am with the direction world governments are going. Indeed, I will go as far as to say we are entering very dangerous times. From my perspective, world governments have completely overreacted to COVID-19, and it's clear from their overreaction, economies are going to be completely ruined. So, the question I ask, why the overreaction? Could it be that governments really care about us and want to keep us safe? Or is there a hidden agenda? Before I give you my thoughts on this, I would like to talk about two matters which may initially appear not to be related. Firstly, I'd like to talk about fractional reserve banking. Richard Nixon detached the dollar from the gold standard in 1971 to enable to fund the Vietnam War. The measure was intended to only be temporary. However, the dollar remains detached from the gold standard to the present day. Prior to 1971, there was a sensible fractional reserve ratio of 1:6. That is to say, 1 unit of gold in reserve supporting 6 units of currency loaned out. The 1:6 ratio ensured that there was not too much currency loaned into existence. The gold standard did have its limitations. For example, it could not prevent boom and bust. However, the boom and busts were not excessive. Following the detachment of the dollar from the gold standard, the dollar became a fiat currency, and there was the potential to abuse the fractional reserve ratio. And this indeed happened over the last 50 years. Banks got wise to the fact that they could loan much more money into existence, which effectively meant there was less money in reserve to support the currency loaned out. Fractional reserve banking is based on faith in the system. Should the public lose their faith in the fiat currency, there would be a run on the banks to withdraw the money. Over the years, the banks and loan companies invented genius methods to increase the fractional reserve ratio. They introduced credit cards. They were prepared to offer 110% mortgages, and loan sharks lent money at an extortionate rate of interest. It is basically a Ponzi scheme. In 2008, there was the Great Recession, and output fell by about 4%, and the Troubled Asset Relief Program was developed in the US to prop up the banks. In the UK, when the coalition government came into power, they promised that the budget deficit would be zero by the end of their term. At the time I thought this was a pipe dream, and it was. Following the coalition government, the Conservative Party got into power, and again they promised to balance the budget by the end of their term. Again, this has been a pipe dream. Now, as I see it, politicians promise the earth to a fickle public. I don't personally believe that politicians haven't got a clue. I actually believe many of them are devious and that they know exactly what they are doing. They just kick the can down the road. Well, we have definitely run out of road. There was no real harsh austerity since 2008. Harsh austerity would have happened if governments tried to balance the budget, but that would have been unpopular, and therefore there is now deferred misery down the road. This leads me to my next point. The Cotton Wool Society, which is basically a nanny state, has been creeping in over the last 30 years or so. Schools in many areas have banned children playing conkers, and on sports days they have banned the egg and spoon race, the three-legged race, and the sack race on the grounds of health and safety. Political correctness has become rife. I worked in the prison service as head of human resources and went on courses to ensure we did not fall foul of any terminology. For example, it was frowned upon to say black coffee. We had to say coffee without milk. When in meetings we could not use the term brainstorming, we had to say thought showers. I remember once I was in a senior management meeting and the governor was chairing it. We were talking about political correctness, and after a while the governor said, "We have gone off on a tangent. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty." A member of the senior management team said to the Governor, "We cannot use that term, and in the police force a member of staff could be suspended for saying nitty-gritty." In a nutshell, as a society we have been softened up. With the background information that I have just spoken about, I would now like to give you my thoughts about the COVID-19. I believe COVID-19 is real. I also believe it kills people. However, I am convinced that it is not much worse than the flu. If the flu was discovered today, I truly believe world governments would react in the same way as they do with COVID-19. The question is why? After all, we have always lived with risks. When we have a bad bout of flu, deaths become higher, yet no one became paranoid by social distancing, wearing face masks and washing their hands on a regular basis for 20 seconds. So what's changed? I believe the public have become conditioned to be risk averse, and that creeping control by the state has altered our outlook. We are more at ease with CCTV in public areas, and we have accepted stricter controls with the security procedures at airports. In many ways, it's made us safer, with only a minor loss of liberty. Well, this is a precursor, again only in my opinion, to major changes in the future, and I mean major. Back in March, early this year, like so many other people, I thought the lockdown was necessary to flatten the curve, to help prevent the National Health Service being overwhelmed. However, after the lockdown, we did not get back to normal. There were still restrictions. Governments advised us to maintain social distancing and recommended the use of face masks when in public areas, indoors. The population complied, and we thought it won't be long before things get back to normal. Then the UK government stated that we must wear face masks on public transport, and in the main the public complied. Then after that the government stated that masks must be worn when out shopping, and from the evidence that I have seen, this is mostly complied with. Later on, we were told we needed to wear face masks in restaurants and pubs. Again, there was a high degree of compliance. The gloom continued to be piled on. There was now a rule that only 6 people could be gathering at a household. Then the tier system became established, with a promise that there would be no further lockdowns, and our Prime Minister stating that we should be getting back to normal by Christmas. Unfortunately, England is now in a second lockdown until the 2nd of December, and the furlough scheme extended to March 2021. The question now is, will the current lockdown be extended beyond the 2nd of December? Over the last 8 months, we have had draconian restrictions. Then they were eased a little, and then greater restrictions, with the promise that matters will get back to normal soon. I don't buy it. This appears to me a coordinated attempt by world governments to place us into a new so-called normal. World governments have been experts in boiling the frog slowly. The frog has now died, along with our freedoms. I suspect it will be difficult to get our freedoms back, because so many people have been conditioned by governments. We don't appear to have the backbone we once had. We have become more compliant. From my point of view, COVID-19 is the pin to burst the debt bubble. It will be the perfect excuse for the Great Reset. With the death rate being so low, and many eminent scientists having a contra view, such as the ones that published the Barrington Declaration, it's very odd that our freedoms have been curtailed to such an extent, unless there is an ulterior motive. At the moment, reality has not hit too many people. The Dow Jones Index is at a record high, and many people have been cushioned by the furlough scheme. It reminds me of the scene in Pinocchio, When Pinocchio went to Toy Town, he was having a great time playing pool, drinking and smoking cigars, until one day he started to grow donkey ears, and then turned into a donkey, only to work very hard behind the scenes. I fear reality will hit very hard at the end of March 2021. It's going to be devastating. Many small businesses will go bankrupt, and the multinational corporations will be making huge profits out of their misery. This is how I see it, and I believe that the destruction of small businesses are intentional to make way for the Great Reset. Driven by the vision, its influential Chief Executive Officer Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum is the main driving force for the dystopian Great Reset. It won't be long before it becomes mainstream to hear, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and build back better." Many people will be destitute and will be forced to give up their assets to obtain security by the state. It's a future I'm very worried about, and I just hope people wake up to the potential dystopian future ahead. Governments will argue there are much more COVID-19 cases and that we need stricter measures until a vaccination can be offered to the general public. And I suspect the vaccine will be mandatory if you wish to have the limited freedoms governments are prepared to grant you. I fear we will end up with a social credit system like China, where they can reduce your social credit score should the state consider you to be in non-compliance with their expectations. In conclusion, I just wish that Donald Trump was re-elected. I am no fan of Donald Trump, but he is much better than the alternative. I fear Joe Biden will continue with much harsher measures in the name of COVID-19 to make the population more compliant in preparation for the Great Reset. Thank you for watching, and keep strong in these difficult and testing times.